I'm Sunny Baker. I serve as the co-director of Mississippi Farm to School Network with perfect timing Miss Dorothy, who is the other co-director of Mississippi Farm to School Network. Our network connects farmers with schools to bring Mississippi grown products into school cafeterias. We advocate for local farmers in schools because we believe that purchasing locally grown, locally sourced food benefits everyone. Our team is dedicated to strengthening the local agricultural economy and educating Mississippians on the importance of eating locally grown, nutritionally dense foods. At schools around the state, we teach students how to grow their own gardens because we believe that if a child helps grow something, they will want to eat it. Huge thank you to the USDA Farm to School team, including the grant that we received this year to put our conference on. And also huge thanks to the folks at National Farm to School Network. That's our professional organization. We are the core partners for National Farm to School Network for Mississippi. And huge thanks to them and all the connections that they support and foster and resources they provide to us. I know this morning we have Jessica, Lacey, Jenny Lee, Anna, and Tomas with us. And we're so grateful for the support. So we're gonna get started this morning. You may have noticed our conference this year has very much a food justice theme. This has always been something that's very important to us, but something we have really cleared up over the past couple of years about what that means and how food justice aligns with our values as an organization. And by the way, you can read about our values, principles, and beliefs that we created with the Mississippi Food Justice Collaborative right on our website. It's right on the About page. We'll place the link below. Sydney, if you could help with that, that'd be great. And so that's certainly an ongoing thread throughout our sessions this year. And we're so grateful for you all who have showed up to learn more and share and join together. So along those lines with our values, we're going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to LeBroderick to do a land acknowledgement for us.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name again is Roger Woods. I'm the early child care specialist for Mississippi Farm to School Network. And I'm also a part of this Mississippi Food System Fellowship. And a part of this fellowship, we were selected based off being a part of 4 different areas across Mississippi: Choctaw, the Delta, Jackson, and the coast. And as one of our initial task as being a part of this fellowship, we were asked to put together land acknowledgements for each of those 4 sections. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read the land acknowledgement because I believe that we have people that are represented from each of these areas, and we want to respect and acknowledge the land in which you are coming from. So I'm going to start off first with Choctaw. We acknowledge those that were brave enough to stay behind, paid the ultimate sacrifice. Through racism, adversity, we survived as Mississippi Choctaws. Our ancestors paved the way for our sovereignty and self-determination. Tribal leaders before their time may have known it, fought for our education, culture, and way of life. And that's the acknowledgement of the Choctaw land. Let's move forward with the Delta. And this is one that's kind of beneficial to me as well. Although I'm not a part of the Delta group, I'm born and raised, so I'm Delta through and through. We want to acknowledge the richness of the soil and the land in the Delta that was the ancestral home of indigenous people and was tilled and worked by enslaved African people. We make a commitment to restoring and regenerating the soil, making it more prosperous and accessible for ourselves and generations that follow. Okay. Next, I'm going to do Jackson, which is the one that I actually assisted in creating and putting together because this is the portion of the fellowship that I'm a part of. We as Indigenous, African Americans, Latinx, women are Mississippians. We acknowledge the truth and the legacies of white supremacy through policy that has impacted our food systems. We acknowledge inhumane policies such as the separation of families, mass incarceration, border policies, and public health. And last but not least, I'm going to do the coast. We like to acknowledge the earliest people on this land who came before recorded history, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, and the Creek for settling on this land and upholding the sacredness of its ecosystem. the enslaved Africans for leaving a legacy of self-sustaining people. We are grateful for the love shared and generational gifts of culture and the light by mixing of tribes, bloodlines in the name of peace. So now that we've acknowledged all the lands, we will always want to make sure that we, like I said, pay respect to the land and, you know, give it its just due.
Thank you, LeBroderick. And to the Mississippi Food Justice Fellows for generating those beautiful land acknowledgements. I'd like, before we get started, everybody to just plant their feet on the ground. And so long as you're able to do this safely, you might even close your eyes. And just take a minute to reflect on those land acknowledgements and what that means for us. Take some deep breaths. Settle your body. Connect to the earth. Connect to your ancestors. One more deep breath in. And slow breath out. Gently blink open your eyes. And we'll get started. We're so thrilled to have Miss Betti Wiggins with us to start off our conference today. So lucky to have her. Betti has been a friend for a while of the Mississippi Farm to School Network and of Mississippi, as she'll tell you about later, but particularly Betti and I had a fun moment. I don't even know if you and I have talked about this. When we were in Madison, Wisconsin, we talked about going on a bike ride together in New Mexico. And of course, the New Mexico gathering has not happened yet. Hopefully that will be able to go forth in person next year. And I'm going to hold you to that bike ride plan we made around town. So I'm going to introduce Miss Betti, and then we are going to play her keynote video, and we'll have a chance for question and answer after the video with Miss Betti live. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. So feel free to put your questions in there. Also, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group, tell us where you're from and who you are, you can do that in the chat box if you'd like. So I'm going to tell you a little about Miss Betti. Betti Wiggins is one of the foremost authorities on school nutrition and food service management. The impact of her work has been felt throughout the country as she continues to work tirelessly to promote the need to provide students with nutritious food. In May 2017, Wiggins was named Officer of Nutrition Services for Houston Independent School District, the nation's 7th largest school district. She is responsible for managing and implementing all of the district's school nutrition programs that serve more than 280,000 students at 287 schools every day, including free breakfast to all students, free lunch at 186 campuses, and dinner served at more than 50 sites. She is also responsible for the operations of the Food Service Support Facility, a state-of-the-art cooking, storage, and distribution center. The facility is the largest modern food production facility of its kind in an urban school district. Prior to joining Houston ISD, Wiggins served as the Executive Director of Office of School Nutrition for Detroit Public Schools Community School District, where she was responsible for meal operations in 141 schools. Under her leadership, the Detroit School Garden Collaborative was established in 2011. Since its inception, the program has grown to support more than 80 school-based gardens and a 2-acre school farm. Her work in Detroit public schools earned extensive praise and positioned her as a transformer of school nutrition through innovative practices and changes. Before her time in Detroit, Wiggins held school district executive positions in DC, Baltimore, Atlanta, Paterson, New Jersey, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. She has also provided both strategic and tactical food service management solutions to charter schools, food service management companies, and public school districts of all sizes. In the private sector, she has consulted on ensuring quality service, operational accountability, and statutory compliance with local, state, and federal laws. In 1989, Wiggins served as one of the first African Americans recruited to management in Marriott Corporation's Division of School Services. Wiggins is the recipient of numerous honors and awards, including the International Food Service Manufacturers Association's 2017 Silver Plate Award, the School Nutrition Foundation's 2017 School Nutrition Hero Award, Food Service Director Magazine's 2017 Food Service Director of the Year, Lifetime Foundation Healthy Hero Award, and the 2016 Fame Award, as well as the School Nutrition Association of Michigan's 2015 Director of the Year. She serves as the vice chair of the local food association and sits on the executive committee of the National Farm to School Network. She has delivered special testimony on the subject of meeting the challenges of feeding America's school children at a congressional hearing before the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry at the United States Senate. Wiggins earned a bachelor's degree in nutrition from Wayne State University and pursued graduate studies at the University of Minnesota. She holds a certificate in municipal management from George Washington University. Welcome, Miss Betti, and I am going to turn it to Sydney to get us started.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to take this time to thank the Mississippi Farm to School Network and a big shout out to Sydney Bush for having me here this morning and being your keynote. What I'm going to do today is go through some items that are very important when you start developing a school garden or a school farm program. But first, just for a little background, I like to, this is my statement of purpose. I became engaged in the farm to school movement to change the food system for the children that I served. And I noticed quite quickly and realized, more importantly, their community as well. I wanted to develop a solution to food inequity, which is a major problem facing most communities of color and impact greatly children and seniors. Food equity is a small part of the food justice movement, but one that's near to me and dear to my heart, and something I thought I could change locally or be a major player in training children to have more than a consumer relationship with their food. And also to give them the skills to determine what food items will be part of their diet. In the community, I serve both Detroit and Houston. Many people do not have sufficient outlets to acquire good, fresh, wholesome food. Food justice says clearly a community must have the right to grow, sell, and eat healthy food. Healthy is believed to me is not a right. It's not a privilege, but it's a right. So therefore, we, as part of the food justice movement, my highest aspiration is to solve food inequity in communities. And again, healthy food is fresh, nutritious, affordable, culturally appropriate, and grown locally with care for the well-being of the land, the worker, and the animal. This is how I envision school-based garden and farming. So we're going to start here. What we're going to be discussing over the next few minutes is establishing a leadership program, the importance of long-term structural program development, investing to ensure a sustainable program, diverse funding methods, and developing student relationship with food beyond consumption. Remember, I said it was more important to me that children have more than a consumer relationship with their food. And forward contracting with farmers and local gardeners. First, I got to tell you about Houston, where I'm at, and I've come to love. This is how we look now since the pandemic. And here's the realization that we have. And this was data even before the pandemic. Almost 1 in 4 children in the Houston area, Harris County, ISD are food insecure. I am 100% CEP. With the pandemic, here's the kind of meal distribution sites we had. We had schools, curbside. We had neighborhood super hot sites. We even had to go to apartments because that's where a lot of our children were. And those apartments are mainly in food deserts when you start talking about some of our public housing area or those housing that's built on the fringe of the city. As well as we have what we call mega sites, campus mega sites, where we have big high schools that we use to feed families in order to feed children. Here's what we did. We distributed more than food, student meals. We also distributed adult meals. We had the opportunity to distribute hygiene products. And then we worked with the Houston Food Bank and something called Family Food Boxes. So the theme was for us that we had to feed families in order to feed kids. All right, so let's get straight to what we are here all about. The challenge of institutional growing. I hope some of this is just, review for some of you who are out there. But here's what I encountered over 10 years of working in the school-based gardening program, and then we expanded into farming. The challenges, I've seen these challenges, I've experienced these challenges, so take me, that's the reason the title of this is School Gardens Are More Than a Notion. The challenge of institutional growing, as you can see now, is the main difficulty is adjusting to the traditional farming timeline. It just doesn't fit when your school garden program, because the time your harvest comes off, your kids are on summer vacation, so you have all that food left. Getting in terms of educating our kids, getting our kids to be familiar with food. And then there's things about access, safety. I don't own the building. We don't own the property. So people won't let you have free access. And it's kind of hard to water on Saturday if you can't get into a building. And then what are we going to do with the food that we develop? These are the challenges. Challenges that are unique to urban farming setups, and particularly in Detroit and here in Houston. Houston's a kind of funny bag. It's a big city, but it's country. There are places in Houston, and this might be something familiar to the people in the South, but in the North, I'm just not coming from the North. I'm not used to areas not having sidewalks in their part of the urban setting. But here are some of the unique things: soil contamination, debris, rodents. All of these issues are items, are things that you find in an urban setting. So be aware of those. And I think, particularly around soil testing, that is a big issue. Be careful about testing soil under the name of your garden, because if somebody, in particular if you're on a school property, whenever I test the soil in Detroit, I haven't had to do it here, but in Detroit, I always tested it under my name because we were in an urban environment, and sometimes we had houses buried underneath our garden, and all kind of stuff leaked out. And I didn't want Detroit Public Schools to be liable for any heavy metals that they had found. And then if I found them under my name, then I would move the garden, or I would try to remediate the soil. The other big thing we had was theft and vandalism. That was a big thing. And so finally, what I decided, the best way to deal with that is I didn't put any fence around my gardens. And that helped a lot, that people felt like they had community access. Why still when you can just walk in? So let me talk about the two experiences I had. The first one, that everybody, my claim to fame is the Detroit School Garden Collaborative. You guys know that was started in 2012 was when we officially started. But there was 2 years of hard work prior to that. And that was because of the Healthy and Hunger Free Act. I had to get my act together. I attended a farm to school convention that was held in Detroit in 2010. And at that time, I just went just to nose around. And thereafter, I got so excited, I attended a urban agricultural farm where they taught me something. I became an urban agriculturalist through a 6-month program that one of my partners gave, and that was very important to me. And you'll see if you read through this slide how we worked with various organizations that knew how to grow, had access to fresh food, knew how to trade, and a particular extension program. And so this is Detroit School Garden Collaborative. What did it offer? It offered a fully functional garden built and installed on school property. one part-time garden attendant. Did you hear what I said? One part-time garden attendant. On-call support for any garden issues that arise, a teacher's training and ongoing resources, and a garden curriculum. The most important thing that you should focus on is that one part-time garden attendant, a paid employee, not a volunteer. And when we get down, I'll tell you the do's and don'ts of volunteers. So the collaborative, that was the executive staff of the Detroit School Garden Collaborative. There was the young lady on the end, Monica, was the program coordinator. The young guy on the other end to the right was my farmer. And that old guy in the middle with the gray hair, that's my oldest brother who had retired and came on as a volunteer. The three ladies were our paid garden attendants. This was all paid staff that was supported by the child nutrition budget. That is the importance. Do not think that you're going to run a multi-site garden program or even one garden on volunteers. Volunteers are like a contractor. You know, they come and go when they want without a W-9. Volunteers are good for big events. If you're putting in a garden and you want to use a volunteer, give them for big events so that they can feel good. But on a regular daily basis, they do not work. Even when they sign up, they can decide not to come. But one thing I could do with the staff, was that I was paying that staff. And I also, if you'll see what they have in their hands, are certificates. I continuously trained that staff so they felt that they had value, so they felt that they could be recognized. What those certificates were for market managers. And if I could get, my brother now is 78 years old, and they just hired him as the full-time garden manager for Drew Farms, which is one of our big projects. And they're all certified. Matt was has certified in pest maintenance. Monica went back to school, got her master's degree in community organization. And these ladies right here, they are out there working our hoop houses. They work the hoop houses. And my brother, the reason he got into the program initially, he had the only truck. So we used his truck for a year. So that's the senior staff, and I was somewhere in the mix, but these were the people that kept the school garden program going, not volunteers. Each one of them were paid, and that made it easy. So they would even come in on Saturdays, and I would have to pay them. So I always had to be careful of budgeting and making sure that they did not, work too many hours or stuff. But the bottom line is they were a line item on the child nutrition budget. That's what I learned, not volunteers. Volunteers are good, like I said, for big events. And Monica used to organize volunteers. But on a day-to-day, we ran with this kind of staff and we hired kids in between. So we have that staff manage school gardens. They manage Drew Farms. I know you've heard of Drew Farms. If you get a chance, go to Detroit, make sure one of your stops will be Drew Farms. We had Ludington. Ludington was a permaculture project that we put in one of the swank communities in Detroit. And at first they complained, but then when they saw the free vegetables they were getting, it was not a problem. They came and they helped and they volunteered. And as you can see, there are no fence. Mackenzie Field. Now, Mackenzie Field is 7 acres of land, and that became a big pick and pay area, pick and pay. These are all of these projects that we had that you just formally seen associated with the Detroit School Garden Collaborative. That was 2010. I left there in 2017, 7 years. We developed that over 7 years. We made a lot of mistakes, but in that we learned a lot of stuff that I was able to translate when I came to Houston. And I bought some of the techniques and some of the things that I had done with the Detroit School Garden Collaborative to establish in Houston the Food and Agricultural Literacy Center at McCowan. And it's totally different. Isn't that a gorgeous building? That is where the farm is going to be located. It is the third oldest school in Harris County. It sits on 6.5 acres of land. And what we have done with that is right now we've cleared about a 1/4 acre. The other day it had no water. So the other day we just got water so we could put in the irrigation lines. But it's 6.5 acres. And again, it's in this Houston city limits, but it's country in terms of what I would say. And I say that with love because it just amazes me. This is what it's going to look like in the future when we get it all built out. This and it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be an educational center. Right now, we are in a relationship with academics partnering. Academics legitimizes who we are, gives us the what we need to go into classrooms. Academics, they open the doors for us. We're also engaged with CTE, Career Technical Education, and they're going to give us some money to help build out of some of this because it's going to be an educational site that we would use for a cohort of 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 kids. You can see it's a totally different program than what you saw in Detroit because it's grounded in education. So, and this is the organizational structure for the food and agriculture literacy. As you can see, it is far more formal. It has far more, a better skill set, than what I had in Detroit because the approach is different. The director of the program is a registered dietitian. I got ag educators. I've got all sort of people with skill sets that I did not have available to me in Detroit. I have a chef trainer. We have to give a big shout out to Brittany because Brittany is a CIA graduate and a Howard University graduate, and she in food and management, and so she's on the education. So this food and agricultural literacy is really grounded more in education, educating kids, and trying to be a career education. So what does that tell you? It talks about those two items and those two organizations. Those two organizations would not exist without having partnerships from the very beginning. Let's spend a little time on this whole thing about partnerships and diverse ways of raising funds. Everybody on this slide were people who I had in Detroit. Detroit was really about going out literally and finding folks to help us. Look at the diversity. From the USA Department of Agriculture, who gave me a grant for a hoop house. Food Corps, who gave me 2 individuals to work in my school garden program. The Detroit Public School Foundation funded some aspects of the money through some aspects of the program through private donations. Eastern Market was an outlet where we were able to sell some of our food. They gave us a farm stand in Eastern Market. United Way was, again, a not-for-profit who reached out to us and gave us the ability to get funding from some other sources. Wayne State University was the major university in our city, but they also had a community medicine program that they helped us in terms of planting vegetables and doing things for healthy things for children. Lifetime Foundation is the one. It's a one organization that gave me $300,000 to put in a processing kitchen. School Food Focus at the time was, and it's kind of disbanded now, but it was concerned about a local procurement of food for children, healthy local procurement of food, which I'll spend some time on at the end of this presentation, because I think sometimes it gets really ignored about what is farm to school really all about. It's not just all about gardens. It's also about local procurement of food and working with farmers. The Detroit Black Community Food Systems Network is a group of urban farmers in Detroit who live in the community, work in the community. And that was important to have them there so we could talk about food justice. They were all about food justice and equity, living in part of the community. You have to understand, I lived in Detroit, but I was able, because I had transportation, that I could go anywhere I want. So I was not handicapped like some of the people who I worked with. And that's what the Detroit Black Community Food System Network kept constantly reminding me, yeah, you might be here in the community, but that's what you of the community, but you're not in the community because you got a car. And I had to deal with that, and that's when I started thinking about my school gardens and what it meant, and establishing that kind of relationship, because they were the ones who made me very attuned to food justice and equity and seeing equity. And I started seeing it when the lack of transportation and things, that people didn't have the outlets that they didn't have, the gas stations where they were spending their SNAP benefits, where some of these grocery stores where the fresh fruits and vegetables look like dead fruits and vegetables. And so how do we change the food system? Farm to School Network, of course, um, in Michigan. And I even had a restaurant. I had a vegan restaurant who we finally put one of their soups on our menu, black eyed peas. But they were very good in that they would try to use up our vegetables in their restaurant. Um, had several white cloth restaurants where the chefs would come down to our garden and pick up fresh fruit and vegetables. Detroit Food and Fitness was another collaborative where they dealt mainly with exercise and health. So, and then of course, the Michigan Department of Education, who was my main funder for my child nutrition program. Green in Detroit was my community-based gardening expert. And so when you look at a plethora of partners. There was my philanthropic partners, there was my public health partners, and I could not do it by myself. So I would tell you, when you go into starting your school gardens or farms or whatever you're doing, don't go alone. If you get a grant, the first thing you need to do is set aside whatever, 5,000 or whatever dollars you want to, for assessment, for guidance. We're not that smart. We're not that used to it. People want to know outcomes. When they give you their money, they want to know, how did you spend it? What's the outcome? We do not know the language. Even now, right now, I don't know the language of grants, or how to close out a grant, or what the expectations are. And one of the things I had to do was I hired Wayne State University Community Medicine as the people who did my evaluation. If the minute you start getting into grants, no matter how big or small, you're going to have to close out a grant. And if you don't know how to do it, you make sure you set some money aside, or find some money, or some sort of way to have someone that can close that grant out for you, because they speak the language. That's what they're there for. And that's $5,000, honey. That's $5,000. If you doing $100,000, that $5,000 is worth it, so that you can spend that $95,000 on the program and services that you want. So again, that would be a heads up that I would tell you. And then, if you're in a school district, make sure you're talking to your technical assistance and guidance from your local state agency, and bother them. Just bother them. If they don't come down and give you what you need, and they won't answer your questions, bother them. And then you're very fortunate in that you have the Mississippi Farm to School Network. That's what they're there for. I used Michigan State University because that they had all kind of resources that I didn't have, and they brought those resources to the table. And oh, by the way, the Gleaners Food Bank, I used the food bank as well, because they helped me with some of my vegetables and can. We made food boxes and for our community. Excellent. So that's so when I wanted to show you this. This is what my biggest donation was $300,000, and that came from Lifetime Foundation. And what we built there was a processing kitchen, which was so important because of all the produce we had. And that facility allowed us to clean and package that produce so we could transport it to several schools and feed our children. That's another thing you have to know. That's another thing you have to know when you are building these programs. What are you going to do with the output? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to do farm stands? What are you going to do with it? And it's important that you know that. It's important also that you know what working with children and getting into the setting with educators. You do need teachers. Again, these are people that you get without paying for, but as my mama used to say, they got a nickel in the quarter, so they right there with you. They want you to be successful because you're helping them meet their needs. And if you have a good partner that can help you walk through some of the paperwork, because there's just a lot of paperwork, and even as in this in-house processing center, I had to, if it hadn't, I didn't know how to put the grant together. So it was my farm to school folk to help me and MSU to put the grant together to acquire this money. Now, so just to review some of the things that I said, I encourage you always to not depend upon volunteers. If you want that program, that garden, you got to have some staff that you can go to and, excuse my language, you give an order to and have an expectation. The other thing is, while you're doing that, you got to look at ways of how sustainability. One of the things you don't want to do is always constantly be running after grant money to keep your garden program going. What did we do? We learned how to do things like pick and pay. We did farm stands. We charged the child nutrition program for any produce that we put in the program, and all of this was allowable under the Healthy and Hunger Free Act. There's a whole, just for a point of reference, there's something called frequently asked questions that you can refer to if you have any kind of confusion. And again, find somebodies who know more than you know about agriculture, school garden. See, remember, you had a notion about a school garden. It was fanciful, it was whimsical. You thought that would be the greatest thing in the world. And you got out there with the shovel and the dirt, and you realized you didn't know as much as you did, but you thought you did. But there are partners out there who know more than that could be more helpful, and it doesn't cost you anything. Always look for free help, but not volunteers. Remember, I said volunteers are contractors who don't get W-9s at the end of the year. So therefore, but give them a big event and they'll be there. Now, one of the things I want to talk about was local food. That sometimes people forget about local food. In Detroit, as you can see, this flyer that I have up here. I'm sorry, the slide I have shows you the local food and the for contracting I do. Two examples I really want to look on. I really want to make you aware of is blueberries that I bought in Berrien County, Michigan, from a Black woman farmer. She had a 58-acre blueberry farm, and I bought 80,000 blueberries from her every year. And the way I did that is through forward contracting. I would buy the 80. I go out because the blueberries are come off the vine in May. My kids aren't in school. So she would pick the blueberries, my 80,000 pounds, process them, sell them to my vendor, my broadline vendor, who would then deliver them to me per school as required. But we had, so with the relationship between the broadline vendor who had the contract with me and the farmer who had to make sure all her paperwork was in order, everything, that is the way I forward contract. I looked at the farmer, then I made arrangements with my broadline distributor. And that's how my kids got locally grown blueberries on their trays in October, November, and December. The same thing with my sweet corn. I went and I contracted with the farmer for 5 acres of sweet corn. He then grew the sweet corn, picked the sweet corn, and took it to my processor, who processed the sweet corn, cleaned it up, broke it into cabets that met USDA requirements, packaged it 40 units to a bag, and distributed it to my schools as I needed it. That's how and the understanding was that if I didn't get enough sweet corn out those 5 acres, that I always would supplement it with corn from, regular Quebec corn. That's how my forward contracting worked. The same thing worked with my potatoes. The same thing worked with my apples. And oh my God, my acorn squash. That was the same way. So that's how I forward contract. We were so good in Michigan about forward contracting, that when I left in 2017, 40% of our produce came from the state of Michigan, because I was lucky to be in the state of Michigan because I had hard produce. So I had tomatoes, I had everything that I could get. Just as my kids come back into school, I could get Michigan sweet potatoes and the like. So there is a way, and there also is a way that you can, if you have a school garden, you can buy stuff from the local garden, or if you are in a school, you can use your own product in your school meals program. I never could raise enough product to feed the whole district. And here in Houston, I don't even try. Totally different approach when you go from 50,000 kids to 214,000 kids. I was able to satisfy and do a whole bunch of, 4, 5, 6 schools around the district, but it was more opportunity. It was a way of taking some of the product out of the gardens and putting it on kids' trays. We did farm stands at local schools. You'll be surprised how much food 6 garden beds will create. So with the principal and the PTA and stuff, they had a lot of fun organizing farm stands or pick and pays or garden cleanup days. There's just so many things that you can do locally. But if you decide you want to buy from the garden, let the garden know that he's going to have to meet GAP standards and do things that are necessary in order for you to buy the food. But I had a very successful forward contracting program in Detroit, even to the point that I would, if you see with those peaches, I did not buy his grade A peaches. I bought the ones that were odd shape and everything, that were loose pack. They weren't tray packed. They weren't all pretty. And I bought that as a small purchase under $5,000. And what we did with those peaches, and it was $5,000. It was not enough the whole district, but out talking to the farmer, I spent more time in my car coming out of Wayne County, if you'll see where that is, and driving all over the state of Michigan and meeting all these guys and going up north. I never got all the way to UP, but I did get to Kalkaska to see my potatoes and also my some apples that I had bought. But there is a way to do it, and it helps. But if you're small, so here in Houston, I don't even talk. I leave buying local to my vendors, who have to certify to me that they're buying local. Sometimes when your school districts get so big, there's things that you cannot do because of the systems that are in place and the bureaucracy. But if you're in a smaller district, you have 4, 5, 6 schools. In Mississippi, you got all these growing. I think one of the best places you got is the Mississippi Cooperative. I think Sunflower County, at one time when I was in Michigan, I was trying to do some work with Sunflower County. But you got a lot of opportunity to buy local, and you grow a lot of things locally. So think about, if you're a school district, go look at your distributor, have a conversation with your distributor, and you'll be able to do some sort of forward contracting. And then, and if you've got a garden, just wash it off and make sure, you know, it's clean, cut it up and put it in your school meals. Now, that's the end of what I have to say about why gardening is more than a notion. But the reason I got engaged in gardening, and you see this picture says it all. When you see kids' faces out in a garden for the first time, when kids learn about the diversity among species, there were so many lessons that I was able to teach in the garden. I taught lessons about diversity in the garden when we raised heirlooms and they knew that all carrots weren't orange, or they pulled a two-legged carrot up out the ground and said, ugh, and I said, that's just as good. Is that, you know, we had lessons about acceptance. And to see these faces and the habit at the little kids, but then when you get to the bigger kids and you see them do things like their own farm stand projects, it becomes rewarding as to why I do what I do. And again, if you have any questions or anything, you can reach me at bettywiggins@gmail.com, or you can Google HISD. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Betty. Are you able to turn your video back on?
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh gosh. I will. Hold on. Oh, there it is. How's that? You should see me. Do you see me?
You see a black screen for some reason.
Okay, I don't know why that is because I did turn my video back on.
No, dang it.
Choose virtual. You know what?
Is your camera covered up?
No, wait a minute. Might be helpful if I face the damn camera. Okay, recording. No, my camera's not covered up. Okay, let's start where I figured, because I'll keep plundering around, as my mom would say, and I'll figure this out. I think it's something to do. That video. Huh.
And while we're working on Miss Betty's video, if y'all have any questions, please add them to the Q&A.
I don't know what happened. Okay. I was up.
I know we had you.
Yeah, we did. We had me, and then
It looks like your video is covered by like a black piece.
I think it's. Did I have the right? Okay. I don't know what happened. You had me up. I don't know what happened. And I got the video. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you fine. So do you want to get started?
Yeah, I do. And I'm going to get somebody in to see if they can. That's the great thing about being an HISD. Boy, I got help around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll get someone in here. Go ahead. Let's get started. Let's not waste time. Everybody knows what I look like.
Yeah. Well, we hope we get to see your beautiful face again soon. But
That's so nice of you.
So we have our first question is from Connie Lemley, and she said, "Would you talk some more about your processing kitchen and how that worked?"
Oh gosh, I'm so very proud of that processing kitchen, because that processing kitchen gave us an opportunity to increase the amount of produce that we could put into our kids' meals. That processing kitchen was not just those pieces of equipment that you saw, but we also had a refrigerator. We had 2 refrigerators. We took the back half of our old high school because, you know, Detroit has just been a victim. Oh, I wish you could see me. Detroit has been a victim of depopulation. A lot of horrible things happened in Detroit. You know, to think that my family came from the South. We came off the East Coast to Michigan, to a city that was the richest city in America. It was called the Paris of the Midwest, and to see what it is now. I didn't attend the Detroit public school system until I was 16 years old because I was in rural Michigan. But we took a high school that one time was historical in it that it was a trade school, and it taught all kind of stuff there. So it had a kitchen, it had a large culinary program. And when we put in that processing kitchen, that helped. I had a centrifuge sink, I had a processing sink, we had scales, tables, we had a clean entrance and we had a dirty entrance and a clean entrance. So it came in on the dirty end, and we washed it and processed it, and then it went into the clean end, and we put through the doorway. I wish I could show you that slide again. Through that doorway were 2 refrigerators, and what we did there was like lettuce. We had 4 hoop houses that produced greens the whole year round. So the ladies would pick the greens, and it was baby spinach. It was all kind of small greens that we put in the South. My kids had not had iceberg lettuce. One of the things that I did when I came back to Detroit, I said, my kids will not have something that's 65% water and rust. So we started using baby greens and baby spinach. The story about baby spinach was one of my ladies told me one day, they said, Miss Betti, you know that spinach was nice, but it really, baby spinach, it really don't go far. And I had to go to the store and I got some turkey necks, and so what? So she cooked them like collard greens. So therein I had to do some education. And I also had to get my people used to seeing baby greens and arugula and the stuff that the only thing they knew that the salad had was iceberg lettuce. And to tell them that you didn't have to have a tomato on a salad. You could put a beet, you could put carrots, you could put all kind of stuff on a salad that came out of the garden. And that was also educating the kids, because all they thought was iceberg lettuce and a slice of tomato with some mayonnaise and vinegar, and that was the dressing. And so that was a whole education process that we had to go through with our children. One of the things that we found out also was that it helped us to get engaged with our kids more around them knowing the steps that it takes. So the kids would come in. We even had little, classes in the evening. So kids would come in now and use the processing kitchen. That processing kitchen, one of the things I'm most proud of, I don't know what's going on with it now, but the young man that ran the processing kitchen, and it was just one young man who worked 4 hours a day. He was 26 years old. In Michigan, when you're educationally handicapped, you are entitled to vocational education until you're 26. And then when you turn 26, they just kick you out of the street and say, go to your group home and sit on the couch and morph into whatever. Well, Corey could count to 30. And Corey could weigh to 3 pounds. And Corey could make stickers. So what we did for Corey was he washed the lettuce, he centrifuged, he could do all the technical stuff around it. But we got him to weigh. He had a scale, and he could weigh the 3 pound bags. He knew how to do that, and we showed it. And then he had stickers, and he took great pride in the fact it wasn't a perfect 3, but he would put 330 in it. He put 33 pound bags in a carrier, and then he would store it in the refrigerator. So Corey ran, and he had a job. The reason I didn't work him more than 4 hours, I didn't want to mess with all the other benefits he had for disability and healthcare and all that other stuff. But his mother would say, this is the greatest thing. She brought him to work faithfully. Corey came to work faithfully. So that processing kitchen, it had, and I get so excited about, I forgot to tell you, it had a sink, it had a processing sink, cost me about $30,000, that processing sink. It had a centrifuge for drying produce, particularly, it was just a big salad spinner. That was about $14,000. Everything that you saw in that picture was clean. We put watchable walls all the way up to the top so we could keep it clean, because now we're dealing with food that we're transporting all over the district. So we had to do our food safety. Food safety was very, very important. As you know, as I said, we had a dirty end. It came into that dirty end, and that's when we sorted it out to make sure it was acceptable. Then we processed it, and then Corey would take it and put it into the clean freezers and refrigerators. So, and that was, we bought that with money from Lifetime. So that whole setup was with the 2 refrigerators that we had, if I can remember, they gave us a 269. I think that cost us less than 125,000, because with the rest of the money, we bought a tractor for Drew Farms. And I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
I mean,
it kind of feeds right into some other questions we're getting. So we have from Mackenzie Fox, who was doing the processing.
From where?
She asked who was doing the processing.
Corey was doing the processing. That young handicapped, educable handicapped young man who had gone through the Detroit public school system until he was 26 years old. And we hired him to be our processor. We had a chef who would come in and supervise him. So the chef kitchen, the processing kitchen was on the left-hand side, and you would go through the door, and that's where the chef had his R&D kitchen where he was working at on a daily basis. So his supervisor was our chef who would go in and check to make sure. But one of the things I found out about Corey, once you taught him a skill, he was very clean. He made sure everything was, he would tell you, no, you can't do that. And it was like the redundancy of how we trained him. I didn't expect anything else out of Corey, but to run that processing kitchen 4 hours a day and do me 30-pound bags and put 30 to a carrier and keep everything clean. And then the chef would come in and supervise. It was Corey and my chef. And I think some of you might know him. His name is Kevin Frank.
That's very cool. And I bet those resources and programs like that are available to us.
Well, here's the thing about Drew Farms that people don't know. Drew Farms used to be a baseball field. The reason we didn't start it for 2 years is that for 2 years we were kicking rocks and digging up first base and second base and finding all. And then we found out there was a house underneath, in the city block, and they had just buried the house. And they came and we were loading in soil, and we did all sorts of things. If you saw the berm there. It took us 2 years to get the soil, even to where we could grow grow produce. Drew Farms is attached to our transitional center, where that voc ed is going on for the educational handicapped kids who are 26 years old. So I also put them a handicap hoop house, greenhouse in the front, made friends with the teacher there, got us a lot of respect in the community from the parents who thought that, these kids had nowhere to go, had nothing to do. And then at one point, as we started the process, the garden beds were built by the educational handicapped kids of Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight had a carpentry shop, and they built our garden beds. So that way we put money back into the program that I would have been putting, I bought the lumber at Lowe's and Home Depot, but these kids built the garden beds. And then we would have the garden beds delivered to the site. And then the children, we put plastic gloves on them, and they would linseed the garden beds. So it was always, how can we get everybody in the community engaged? And like I said, my funniest stories about why I took down fence was a lady called me one day and she said, Miss Wiggins, there's this man walking up and down the street selling collard greens for 25 cents a bunch. And I know he got them out your garden. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? She said, well, he got him out your garden. I said, look, baby, at least somebody got a job. So, I mean, but what he did when he picked those collards, he did destroy them. He picked the right leaves because he knew that whole agricultural background came back to him. And he went, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle it all. And he would pick the leaves. He put them in. He got those plastic bags, t-shirt bags, And he was going up and down the street selling them for 25 cents a bunch or a bag. I really didn't have a problem with that because he took care of my garden.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really beautiful partnership.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even a part, you know, the thing about how you get help from nowhere. How you get help from nowhere. Here's a man who was, I don't even know who he was because I didn't even try to track him down because I looked at the results of what he had done to my garden. Because, you know, everybody go collard. Yeah, collard greens, mustard greens, and turnip greens. Got plenty of them. And everybody likes them, and tomatoes and okra and cucumbers and yellow squash. And he was taking care of a garden that we couldn't get to. And he was taking that produce out of that garden and selling it in the neighborhood, which was a food desert. Do you see the beauty in that? I didn't have to know him. I didn't care. I didn't care what he did with the money. He wasn't, you know, he wasn't making millions and billions. But then you would go to that garden and see how he was taking care of it. And then all we would have to do is come and water it. Because garden beds, you know, you have to water those. They take a lot of water. And sometimes I wish that I could grow in ground instead of in those garden beds. And you know, sometimes it's gonna sound strange. I'm looking here in Houston. If you could see what we were doing behind Makawa, and we're not gonna have a whole bunch of garden beds because they take a lot of water. They take a lot of energy. And in 5 years, I got a call from Matt, who is running a school garden program in Detroit now. He said, Betti, these garden beds need to be replaced. It's been 6 years old. They're 6 years old, and they're falling apart. The dirt is good, but the lumber around them is falling apart. So who's going to replace them? And you know that takes a whole lot of energy to replace a garden bed. And I said, Matt, can't you spread the soil out? Since we tested the soil already, can't you just spread it out and start growing in the ground? And I mean, maybe, you know, philosophically, I'm not all that in love with raised garden beds, and unless somebody can tell me why we do it, because it takes a lot of water and takes a lot of attention, and you got to top them off. You got to do something as opposed to cultivating the ground, and particularly in if you got good soil like they have in Michigan. Michigan has wonderful soil. So you know, what are we doing with these? You know, I think farm to school and the people in farm to school need to talk about that. You need to talk about why are we adding in the extra expense of raised garden beds if we have good soil?
Yeah.
If we have water. I think I don't know if that's a policy issue or I don't know what that, to me, is a money issue.
Well, I see Miss Dorothy nodding her head, and do you want to add to that, Miss Dorothy?
Yes, Betti, one of the things that I see a lot of places use raised beds, it has some benefits. You have a little more control of the weeds depending on how you did the beginning level of the raised bed. And it also doesn't really matter how much it rained, you're able to still harvest from a raised bed. Now, those are some of the benefits, but the drawback that I always see, and you did mention it, which is it's to build the beds, unless you find used materials like stone or whatever,
tires,
out of
whatever,
the expense of that. And then you're out of the expense of adding artificial soil and not the natural soil. I tell people you're adding dirt in and you're not putting in topsoil. But when it's topsoil, I won't say the word soil, but when you're having to put in other things that's not composted to give you that energy that you need in that soil, then that's an added expense. But you can also do raised beds, and the raised beds could be done without using wood. You can just use that same soil and top it, but you still, to me, in ground, but you added necessary nutrients to help build the fluffiness of that soil. So it could still be within a raised aspect, but not necessarily framed. And as you do, a lot of times there's no till, but you can actually mix that.
Dang it, Dorothy, we lost you.
Yeah.
But Dorothy,
that.
Dorothy, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
One of the things that I did, I really do have question. I question how much money I had to put into wood. Home Depot was a friend of mine, or I was a friend of theirs, however you want to say it. And then we started looking around at things like tires for little kids, because I was challenged to do an early childhood garden. And I just couldn't see putting some money into raised beds, and I'm going to put them, I got little 4-year-olds. But that was one of the things that Farm to School, Farm to School got into this thing around 2013 or 2016, older little kids, early childhood. And I went on trips, I did all sorts of stuff. Dorothy, we finally came up with tires. We put early childhood gardens in tires. And one of the other ladies said, you know what, we ought to go get one of them swimming pools that they serve up in K-Marks. So we started being, and I'm telling you, I could be wrong. Somebody correct me. I'm still old enough to take guidance and stuff. What are we doing with these raised beds? And are they the most avid? Are they even ecological friendly? Because of the kind of wood and stuff you have to do. Now, we had a compost pile. At every school that we did, we created a compost pile. So there was always some way that we could get some nutrients for these small gardens. But you can take tires and they're deep enough for a little kid to have a garden space that's big enough, even diameter wise, and trying to reach across, because we wait. To me now, here's to go something else. I think we waste all that middle space when we deal with these raised beds. And then how much production area are we losing? And I would challenge you in a place like Mississippi, where you didn't have the soil contamination issues that I had in Detroit. I had real bad issues. And I don't have them in Houston. As you can see, we've laid down some plastic. We're going to kill some weeds, and we're going to grow through. We're going to punch some holes in that plastic, which we also did in Detroit. And the other issue I want people to look at is permaculture. I think permaculture is an up and coming thing. If I got ladies who were retired teachers and librarians out there tending a permaculture garden, because they grew their okra, it grew all the things they needed. So I challenge Farm to School to look at those. And I guess I would say nationally, we need to look at those issues and say, are raised beds the way to go? Is there another way we can do? Is there another way we can train our people? Tires, I know they're not good. I'm not worried about a rubber tire. It's gonna be around for a while. And I got that idea from a school where they had stacked up some tires and grew flowers out of them. And I said, wait a minute, we can grow vegetables and make early childhood gardens. So I challenge you, Sonny, to see if that's something that, we could have a further discussion around, or a workshop, or see if anybody's doing something different. Because if you lay down plastic like we did, if you looked at the back of McCullough Farm, we're not gonna have no beds out there. We're not gonna raise no beds out there. Them little kids gonna bend, and they're gonna bend. And I got me a little Home Depot 5-gallon bucket with a cushion on it. And I'm gonna be out there bending with them because I can't get on my knees. Oh, Sonny, we can't do the bicycle unless you're gonna let me use my tricycle, because I had knee replacement surgery.
Doing the tricycle. We'll make it happen.
I got my tricycle. I have a tricycle. So I challenge, I still gonna have that ride. So I asked you from Farm to School. What do you guys think about that? I mean, is that or where did he go?
Yeah. Well, Dorothy, actually, I would say one of Dorothy's claim to fame in our network and in Mississippi is being able to grow food in anything. And actually, we were smiling at each other. We talked about the baby pools because we launched a home garden program this year, and we're instructing people who are just starting for the first time to grow in baby pools with holes drilled in the bottom. Dorothy, do you want to talk about that?
With that particular project, we leave about 1.5 inches or 2 from the base, and we pierce like 4 holes, and it leaves you with that 2-inch reservoir for water. And as we water the gardens, we also work with the what do you call them?
Is that me?
We work with the children to not have to do a whole lot of watering as much. You know, our soil normally leaks out when the water leaks out of a pan if you pierce the holes in the base. So it gives us that retainer where we don't have to water as often. Because like you said earlier, our raised beds do require a lot of water because it drains right on off. But if we got them in those containers, then we don't have that part to, worry about. So that's what makes it so great.
Yeah.
So our children, we introduce to them as a starting point, especially if you don't have space to have much of a garden that you can use this on your patio. You could use it at the edge and cracks and crevices in your yard to be able to grow something. So we talked about container gardens, more or less over raised bed gardens. It's less investment in your container gardens than it is raised bed.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Sonny, could you do a workshop on, is something I'm learning about, is wicking beds and learning so we can reserve water. And like Dorothy said, Dorothy, I'm trying to get my folks here so you can see me, because I'm really excited about meeting you, to see somebody else got some gray hair besides me.
Full.
Girl, I'm so glad to see that. I'm so glad to see that gray head. You just don't know, because I've been around a long time doing this, and I'm going to keep on doing it as long as I can, knee replacement and all. But the whole thing about growing in anything and getting kids to understand you can grow in anything. Old furniture that's laying around, go get those drawers out of that old furniture that they go pick up in the trash heap. Knock some holes in the bottom of it, and it's deep enough. It is deep enough that you can grow. You can grow, you may not be able to grow tomatoes because their roots get so long, but everybody gets so, exaggerated and happy about tomatoes. One of the things I did was heirlooms, and the reason I grew heirlooms was because of teaching the kids diversity. My whole experience for school gardens, my whole experience with school gardens have been about teaching kids.
There you go. Hi, Betty.
Huh? Where am I?
We see you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did it wrong. I'm sorry. You can see me now?
We see you now.
Okay. Well, and I can see you. How wonderful. Stop it. So, but the whole experience I had is starting with little young children, and then but we got to get it to the place, farm stands, and getting older kids engaged in it, and teaching older kids that this is an honorable way to make a living and learn to love the earth and learn to appreciate the history of, I did a whole bunch of, in my gardens, I did a whole bunch of lessons with older kids. This ain't nothing but sharecropping. I said, honey, you don't know what sharecropping is. I said, so here's what you got to understand. I'm giving you this land, and you have to do a budget. You're going to do a plan. And what I was able to do, in Detroit Public Schools let me do it. They were able to keep the money. And again, you want to talk about partners. We had a place called Birmingham. We have a place called Birmingham, Michigan. A lot of rich people live up there. They called me and said, bring your kids up with their produce, and I guarantee you will buy it all, because they were so impressed with what we were doing in Detroit that everybody wanted to help. And I'm telling you right now, I couldn't have done anything. It was the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. And if you don't know anything about Michigan, somebody's got to say, what, you were selling in Birmingham? Because that's exactly what kind of place it is. So those are the opportunities. I wanted to take it from avocation to vocation. Avocations was the little bitty babies, and I enjoy them. You see, I had my arm, I had a bouquet of little girls at the end. But when you look there to a teenage, particularly a boy, and girls now, because I had them working teams and they were, they could be all boys and all girls. Have them do a farm stand. I got a young man right now. He's got to be 21, 22 years old, who was living in a homeless shelter. And he started a garden at Douglas, wherever we would just start a garden anywhere. Kid want to start a garden? Yeah, there, that's yours. And now that young man went to Washington, D.C. I took him to Washington, D.C., and he was in a chef cook-off where he and his team participated in a national cook-off, and they came in with the silver medal. They didn't get the gold. We were robbed, as always. And what he was, and he said, in accepting the award, he said, I am not a chef. I am a gardener. I grew this food. My team and I grew the food, and the food that they had in their, back home that got them to Washington, they did grow it. And he always said, I am not a chef. I am a gardener. And that was important to me because that whole thing about kids having more than a consumer relationship with their food. He understood. He knew how to make choices. He made recipes. He was not a chef. His team beat every culinary kid in the city of Detroit. Oh, they were there shaking their pans and doing all that stuff. And they made a veggie meal and got stuff they grew in their garden. So, if there's school food service folk on here, get with kids. Kids will make it worthwhile. And like I said, I don't see anybody asking any questions about local procurement, because that's a big part of farm to school that people miss.
Mackenzie Fox about were you procuring outside of your own gardens, which I know you have. Betti, we could go on for hours, but we've only got about another minute or so. But yeah, please do answer that. And then I just want to let you know also that Tomas asked a question about what would you say are the biggest challenges for local communities and their efforts?
Whoa. Let me answer that, because I think that's important.
Okay,
I think that's what you had.
Miss Betti is doing a lot of procurement, local procurement.
Okay.
Outside of our own gardens, and we have a whole session tomorrow morning on local procurement. Sydney, I believe it's tomorrow morning. I'll double check the calendar, but yeah, if you want to get to this question from Tomas about food sovereignty, that'd be great, and then we'll wrap up. And
food. Local procurement of food is like food sovereignty to me. That day that I met, and her name is Barbara Norman. Her family's owned that 58 acres out there on Lake Michigan, and she had no kind of way to get her product into the food system, into the supply chain. And we in schools had the biggest opportunity. I went there and talked to her, and I said, Barb, you got to do X, Y, and Z. She did that. And then I went back and told my broadline, you will buy her product. And he did. And what happened is when he bought her product, she immediately got cash flow. He had to pay her for that product that he didn't put into his supply chain, so that I would pay him when he delivered it to my school, not only the cost of what he paid her, but his delivery fee. So I had no problem with my process. I had no problem with my broadlines, because they got the more, and locally, and the footprint was smaller. It wasn't like they came out of I used to hate it when I was here, Washington apple and a Detroit menu. I like, oh my God, as many apples as we grow here, you had to go all the way to Washington. And we, so those are the kind of things that we did, but it took a real effort. It took some help. There's some really great people in Michigan that you don't have on this that should have been here, like Jane Whitaker, who's done a lot of stuff. There's just a lot of good people who are doing things in Michigan with local food. And I mean, because the state was small enough, it did take me 6.5 hours, and sometimes I stayed overnight. But to know the farmers, to know when you're in a farm, know your farmers, I've heard that somewhere, know your farmers, know your food, or something like that. It came out of something we do. That local procurement is so important. And you can do it, school people. You can do it. I would say you have a responsibility to do it. You can do a small farmer. When you're in a small, it hurt me so bad one time. I went back to my hometown, Whitaker, Michigan. They invited me. And they had all these farmers who wanted to sell food in Detroit. And I was too big. They couldn't do anything. But if you're in a district at 2 and 3 schools, and somebody got a half-acre garden or a acre garden, if you made the effort to go out there and talk to them, help them with their crop plan, tell them what's going to be on your menu. What do you need to grow? Farmer, you need to grow cucumbers that are going to come off in XYZ so I can menu in October in my cucumber tomato salad. That's how that works. It doesn't work that I'm buying local. It took a lot of work, I'm telling you, because I had to talk to them, and I also had to do things like hold them harmless, because supposedly it didn't rain. And he could not come up, but he could not give me enough corn out of that 5 acres. I said, well, guess what? Menus are subject to change. And I bought corn or kernel corn or did whatever I had to do. But it takes a real effort, a real partnership. We got to partner with our farmers if we're going to change the food system, and not just let big ag control everything. That was my thing. Right. I didn't want big ag controlling me. And that's what I was getting through my broad line. He was going out getting big ag. When I get apples from Washington, that's not a big ag. But when I can get apples out of the state of Michigan, that's local. And then local to me, I just had to change my footprint. You saw what Wayne County's at. I didn't even know all of that existed in my own state. I mean, so that's that. I get excited about that because I got to meet Barbara Norman. I got to meet women who had raspberry farms. Do you know how many women farmers I met in the state of Michigan? Had raspberry farms. I'm sorry. That's
we could listen for hours, but Sydney is letting us know that this is going to stop at noon. So I want to be sure to wrap up.
The biggest problem I confronted in school garden was not having ownership of the land. And when you don't have, you are subject, it goes back to the long story about food justice. Yes. You know, it goes right back to food sovereignty. It goes back to food justice. If you don't control the land, then you are subject to somebody else. Like I said, my garden, I couldn't get in the buildings, the water. People, you know, wouldn't allow us to do it. That was the biggest problem. And luckily I was in Detroit where they wanted me to do something with all that vacant land. But you can get into a situation if you don't own the land. And that's when you get into talking to people and trying to form cooperatives. I had this weird idea that ran through my head, and I don't know. If you could work with a farmer and say, let me have a school garden, a little piece of your land, and then I'll work with you to try to integrate your product that you're growing into my school menu. If you don't have, you got to think about ways how you can find your resources, because somebody's going to drop it in your lap. And then, like I said, the other biggest handicap I had is that closing out grants. To this day, full grown as I am, you see, I got to have people around to help me. There's something wrong with that, because one of the things I don't want to happen is I don't want my money taken away from me because I fail to do something properly. And people are going to want, and you know what? And you should not be concerned or think it's bad that you got to be accountable. You're taking up people's money.
Yeah.
If you don't have to take nobody's money, then you don't have to be accountable.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna give a big shout out.
We have to get kicked off, but this is so good. And I really wish we could go on and on. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm glad. Did you finally see me?
We can see you.
We can see you, Miss Betti.
Always. And that was really generous of you to share your email with everyone. So please do follow up with Betti or with us, and we can connect you with Miss Betti. If you have more questions for her, clearly she is such a wealth of information. We are going to have a little break now.
Dorothy, when are you and I going to get together?
Sorry.
Real soon, Miss Betti. We're going to have to talk after this.
Where are you at?
I'm in Mississippi. I'm in Shelby.
I can get there. I want to meet you.
Y'all,
we actually met Miss Betti in Chicago.
Really?
Yes, and we talked about Coahoma County.
Oh my God! Yes, that's where I was at. Oh, I'm sorry.
Y'all can stay on. Y'all can stay on. Okay, so 12:15. Please don't forget, we have a really awesome workshop coming up and a field trip of Chalk Fresh. Our tribal nation here in Mississippi. We've got a tour of their farms, and then we'll get to talk with Miss Tamika Bell about everything that they've got going on. That's in 13 minutes at 12:15 Central Time. When we close out this session, a quick evaluation will pop up. Please fill that out so that we know what we're doing right and what we need to improve on. Know that after the conference this year, we're going to hold some regional networking Zooms. So look forward to information about that. That will come out in your newsletter or on Facebook too, if you follow us there. I wanted to also mention that our home garden grants are still open. We have more slots available. So if you are a Mississippi family looking to start or expand a school garden, please visit our website and navigate to the home garden section. Sydney posted a little bulletin board link in our chat box below. So if you have an upcoming event or something you want everyone to know about, please go to that bulletin board and enter that. And yeah, we'll see y'all at 12:15. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm going to let Dorothy and Betti take it away from here. And we'll see y'all in just a little bit. Betti, you're getting a lot of thank yous and hello chat box.
Thank you. I love what I do.